We're in the generation of the influencer.
Influencers, right? And how much influence do you actually have? What is it that you're influencing on?
Welcome, friends, to the Budo Brothers podcast. My name is David. Joining me, as always, are Eric and Kyle, founders of Budo Brothers. Well, let's talk about influence today, gentlemen. What do you say?
Sounds like a plan.
I like it.
I'm going to influence you to talk about influence. And what I want to know is basically just think of influence in terms of good and bad, right? Good influences and bad influences. I certainly have had both in my life. I'm sure you have as well. First thing I want to know, though, is somebody or a situation that has influenced you in a positive way. Can you give me something?
Well, I would say that the biggest influence and impact of my life has been my family. Like my upbringing, my mom, my dad, my sister, growing up in that household was one of the best influences in my life. I know so many different households that aren't, so nice. So like I feel truly blessed to have been born in the household that I am, and it shaped me into the person that I am today. But when it comes to life, I have so many different people that have influenced me, whether it's like mindset wise, business wise, and just kind of expanded through it. I what about you, Eric? Like, is there somebody that stands out right now, like who's ultra influential?
Honestly, right out the gate, my family is the same way. I mean, we're lucky, we're blessed, and I would have to say that, but I don't want to give the same answer.
Right.
So I would actually look to the influence that my sensei had on me in my initial journey into this next phase of my martial arts life. And I remember I had just graduated. Now, I was so dedicated to martial arts in high school, in my adolescence. And then when I got into university, I am not an academic, and I needed to spend the time that I would be spending training a different art. I was training the art of how to learn school because this shit's hard.
Right.
And so I had tutors and I had mentors that would help me through to get to that point. And so I had to stop training while I was in university because an engineering degree takes all hands on deck, especially if you're not that smart. So I had an army of tutors, and I promised myself that when I graduated, I would get back into martial arts, and I would continue to pursue my passion for martial arts. And when I graduated, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was just when Ninja Assassin came out. Do you remember the movie Ninja?
Yeah, I remember that movie.
Yeah. So Ninja Assassin came out, and now before that came out, I had trained in ninjutsu because I was fascinated with the ninja. I wanted to throw throwing stars and do all that cool ninja shit.
Right.
And I remember being like, when this movie came out, I'm like, oh, everyone's going to want to get into ninjutsu now. So it's like, I bet you it's going to be hard to find a great place to train. And I really wanted to explore more of ninjutsu because I just got started really before I had to kind of give up to going into school. And I remember my dad, how you're like, I don't know, my dad has blanketed all martial arts as Taekwondo because that's what I started out in, is Taekwondo. And he'll be like, oh yeah, there's this Taekwondo place that opened up close to my office. I'm like, Dad, that's jujitsu. Like, yeah, it's all the same shit. And so when my dad said, hey, there's this ninjutsu, I met a ninjutsu master at the seminar I was at. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. He was probably a Hapkido guy.
Yeah.
Right? No, yeah, maybe. I'm like, okay, there's no chance. Sure enough, he was. He gave me his phone number. He's like, yeah, he told me to call you. He told me to tell you to call him. So I called him, and sure enough, it was. And it was just this amazing human. And I was like, oh my, I had a really just a good vibe. Like, wow, this is a man of wisdom, and like I would love to learn from this guy. So I remember going to this dojo just like super nervous, like not knowing what it was going to be like, and getting accepted into this school, and how influential my sensei was it truly changed my life. I quit drinking for probably 2 years. I stopped drinking. I was focusing on health. I was training every day. It was such a positive influence because I looked up to him. I was like, wow, he's at peace, and I want that, And it was
Nice.
it was a very positive impact in my life.
That's really cool.
David, who's your influence that has been positively impacting your life?
I mean, there's a ton. This kind of hits on a question actually that I sort of want to ferret out before I answer that, because is there a difference between influence and inspiration?
Ooh.
Somebody influencing you or inspiring you, is it the same thing? I'm just kind of curious what you think.
Interesting.
Huh. I really think that inspiration is in the positive light. Influence can be on both sides of the coin.
Yeah, you can't be inspired to be a piece of shit.
If you hang out with some suspect people and you start getting into their ways, like that's a bad influence. You've heard that term, bad influence on people, right? And sometimes I wonder if Eric's a bad influence on me.
Sometimes we are bad influences on each other.
But
it's like, oh yeah, I was inspired to pass out in a puddle of my own vomit in the back of a bar somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
You wouldn't really say that, I guess.
No.
And how do you get the title of an influencer? Because like we're in the generation of the influencer.
Influencers, right?
Like what? Like that's a term. Like that. Oh man,
I'm an influencer.
that person's an influencer.
Ooh, let him in.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh, oh yeah, get him.
Like, what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
Like,
so, and how much influence do you actually have? What is it that
Right.
you're influencing on? What message, what energy, what are you propagating out of your platforms to be this influencer? And I would be willing to bet that a lot of, just because you have however many hundreds of thousands of followers, are they following you for the right reasons?
and if what's better, influencing hundreds of thousands of people at a micro level, or influencing one person and completely changing their life?
Well, okay. So here I'm going to give you one of the people that influenced me is John Corcoran, and John Corcoran was the editor of Black Belt magazine, I believe, back in like the 70s and stuff like that, and eventually went into MA Success with Century Martial Arts.
Cool.
And when it came time for me to and just as somebody who was highly insecure, and being like, I really like to write and I want to write an article, and I reached out to John as the editor of the MA Success magazine and said, hey, listen, I have this idea for an article. And this guy with 30, 40 years of experience in writing and editing really brought me out of my shell.
Cool.
And was like, I give me your idea and let me see your idea, and this is your idea. And he's like, okay, this is really great. And I ran it by other people, and and when I finally sent him an article that was published in that magazine, and he had called me afterwards and was like, I need to let you know that I read your article and I'm just floored at how good it is.
Cool.
And you're a writer at heart. Beautiful. You need to keep doing that. And that really pushed, that was wind in the sails for a really long time. And it still is.
Nice.
Sadly passed away last year. I actually got a phone call from him just a couple weeks before he had passed away, asking me to write more for him. And that's the kind of positive influence that it was exactly what I needed at exactly the time I needed it, in exactly the category of my life that I needed it in. And and what's really cool about that, because you talk about somebody who's an influencer, and do they influence lots of people or just one person? That was the influence on me. I wrote that article, it got in the magazine, and all of a sudden I'm getting calls from dojo owners across the country asking me about my philosophy and how I ran the school and how can they implement things that I was implementing because, that I talked about in the article. And so just influencing one person doesn't necessarily mean you're just influencing one person. You could be changing their trajectory that will change limitless trajectories afterwards.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And that really is a lot of power as far as influence goes. Now, the people that are like, oh, I'm an influencer, so I can review your hotel. Please give me a free, 7-day vacation. Mm-hmm. That's not okay. That's not influencing. That's being, that's making a hotel owner scared that they're going to get a bad review from somebody with 100,000 followers, right. Is what that is. And so that kind of falls more into the realm of bullying almost.
I think one of the scary things about influencers or being influential is that you have to have something that people want, whether it's looks, money, like a certain lifestyle, knowledge. And this was a kind of a mind mashup that I thought of as like an influential person to me is Phil Knight. And if you don't know who Phil Knight is, proves my point. Phil Knight created Nike.
Okay.
Yet Phil Knight uses influencers to distribute his brands, such as LeBron James and other athletes.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. So you
absolutely.
have this guy who is at the pinnacle of product development, creating a brand, and changing so many lives across the planet.
Totally.
Yet isn't as viewed as influential as maybe some of the people he's hired.
Right. Which is a fraction of the true influence. Because think about the people that Phil Knight has influenced. Think of the thousands of employees. Think of the thousands of people that have had their lives enhanced by the brand that Nike is.
Just a little guy named Michael Jordan.
That's right. Totally.
Right?
It's really interesting. And you know what's so cool about that is that was the first, social media didn't exist then.
No.
And that was the influencer strategy, right? Like now they talk about the social media marketing strategy. Oh yeah, get influencers that have followers. You know what? We've actually tried this. We've tried this a couple times. We're like, I don't know, is this thing legit? Like, let's get some influencers to see what happens. And you know what? It's half the time the influencers are paid for, or the followers, they got bought on some, it's hard to know what's real. There's a difference between having actual influence and being a leader, and being a leader to a community that looks up to you. And if whatever it is good for this guy, it's good for me. There's power in that. That's real influence because they trust you.
That's it. Being a real influencer. Like a real influencer is a sensei or a grandmaster or a teacher or an educator who shows up every day and influences the lives of children and people.
And could have zero followers.
But the amount of influence that they have in a person's life is massive. They can completely change the direction a person's life is going.
That's true influence.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this brings up a Dave Kovar thing. Ooh. And I know you guys know Dave Kovar.
Big fan.
He's a man.
I'm a huge fan. I had the pleasure of interviewing him for a podcast a couple years ago, and we just had such a good conversation. He's just a really down to earth, nice guy. And one of the things he always contrasted was influence versus authority. And how can you, as somebody who's in a position of authority, you're the boss or whatever, are you being the boss saying, do this thing? Or are you using your influence saying, I'm doing this thing, I've done this thing, I've been there, and I know you can do it too. Or let's do it together. And I think that is a huge difference in, how you approach people and how people perceive you. If there's a South Park episode I don't know if you guys watch it.
Geniuses.
But it's all about Yelp reviews. And what ends up happening is that every single person in the town ends up saying that they're a Yelp reviewer in order to get the best service and the best meal at every restaurant. And that's not influence. You're not an influencer. You're basically just saying like, I need to have a good meal or I'm going to give you the worst review ever. And that kind of drifts into bullying in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so if you have to say the words, I am an influencer, you're not influencing anybody in a positive way.
Good indicator. That is a good indicator.
That's a sign.
Often the time, people that truly influence others don't even know it.
Yes.
Right.
So true.
And you use that influence before you use authority. It basically, if you're in a position of authority, you do your best to bring people along under your wing and do what you can for them. At the end of the day, you're the boss and you're like, look, it just needs to be done this way. And that's that. I'm sorry you don't like it. But you don't really want to get to that point if you're really trying to influence people in a positive way. Go ahead.
Influence should be a byproduct of your actions.
Nice.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to create this fake lifestyle and images and pretend to dance and like absolutely create a fake environment to impress people. Like I look at some people on Instagram who you can tell like that's not who you authentically are.
Yeah. It's a fraud.
What a horrible way to live.
Man.
Like in order to be successful or to have people like you have to become something you're not.
And your validation, you need that validate. Like you have to be validated by the number of likes. And if only 1,000 people liked that photo and it wasn't 2,000, you take it down. Like that's a brutal way to live. Because you're depending on others' opinion of you to decide and dictate who you are.
Absolutely.
Your identity is not defined by yourself. It's defined by others.
And then on the other side of the coin, the most influential martial artist in my life is Muhammad Ali. Like that is my go-to martial artist. That is my most influential martial artist in my life. And he didn't have social media or TikTok or like taking pictures. He was.
Just imagine him on TikTok.
He'd be a savage.
That'd be so great.
He did have a persona and a vibe to him.
Yeah.
And he was arrogant and he's like, I'm too pretty to get hit. I'm so fast, I'll hit you before the lights turn out. Like that type of like he was a character.
Yeah, right.
But he was authentic in his character. And you could tell that
it was him.
That's who he is. He didn't put on Muhammad Ali like he was Muhammad Ali.
Dude, okay. Good example of this.
Yeah.
Master Wong.
Oh, yes.
Master Wong, if you haven't seen Master Wong, check him out on YouTube. And he's a character. Like he is.
Oh yeah, he is.
He's a character. And I kid you not, I have had more laugh attacks thanks to that man. And I kid you not, we met him when we were down in the Martial Arts Super Show. And we got to meet him and we actually ended up becoming, like we hung out, we went out for dinner, we had breakfasts.
Yeah, we gave him a hoodie.
Yeah, he has it. He's rocking a hoodie.
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually filmed it. We'll include the video in the show notes.
Yeah.
We literally filmed, we gifted him a hoodie and it was the coolest thing ever. And he looks badass in it. But
of course.
What was so cool was that we knew of Master Wong before we met Master Wong. And when we met Master Wong, we met Master Wong. We didn't meet somebody else. That is who he is. Sure, he turns up the volume for some instances and he knows what is humorous to others and he'll turn that on. But I kid you not, that man is authentically himself, and it is a beautiful thing. I have not laughed so hard in my life when that one night in Vegas where we were hanging out with Master Wong, Master Ken, Sifu Singh. Oh, dude, it was epic. I had to pinch myself.
And he has a baby now. He's putting in a lot of things. He talks to his baby the same way he talks to everybody. Hey, my baby's doing push-ups. Even my baby's doing push-ups. What are you doing?
He's such a gem, but that's real authenticity. And he actually, the best part about Master Wong is that he actually comes from a place of wanting to serve and help people become a better version of themselves, because
The right influence.
through martial arts, he became a better version of himself. And if you haven't read his book, The Event, read it. You want to talk about real struggle, you want to talk about real racism, you want to talk about violence and a terrible, challenging upbringing, and how martial arts can actually lift you out of the ashes and bring about peace and stability and a beautiful life. That is what the book is all about. And I can't recommend it enough. I couldn't put it down.
And that holds true to a lot of the influencers in martial arts. Like Dave Kovar is an influencer in martial arts.
Yeah.
Sifu Singh is an influencer in martial arts. And, they sometimes, in my opinion, don't get enough respect when it comes to like Instagram and Facebook. It's because they don't come from that
Generation.
place or generation. Like they don't go out and be like, oh man, I got to put this in my story.
Right. Or they're like, oh shit, it only had 20 likes.
Yeah. Like we do that. Like we do that. Like, let's be
It's a
real.
metric.
Like, and like, we're like, oh man, this is sick. Like we should throw it in the story.
Right.
But like, that's the time we grew up. And you have these people who were before that time disappearing a little bit because the way the attention has changed, where people are, DVDs don't exist anymore. Like magazines aren't the same. Like things are changing. I hope that this podcast is influencing at least one person in a positive way.
Absolutely.
And if we have influenced any of our listeners in a positive way, then you know what? Hit us up, let us know, because that is fuel to our fire. Honestly, there's nothing, I literally can't describe how good it feels to get an unsolicited email from someone that says, hey, you know what? Thanks for this course, or thanks for, this changed my life. You guys keep doing what you're doing. Like that pours gasoline on our fire.
Honestly, it's one of the biggest driving forces in Budo Brothers. It's what got us going. When we started doing things and people were like, man, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Like, knowing that you have affected a person's life in a positive way, it's powerful. It's addicting.
But it's also almost
absolutely.
It's almost hard. It's hard to respond your gratitude and convert that feeling into words, because when somebody takes time out of their day to reach out to you and say thank you for something that was positively impacting their life, like that's a big step. Like, people are busy. People don't have time to just do that. So when they do it, that's meaningful. And to know that what the journey that Kyle and I are on is helping other people makes us want to stick to that path. It makes us want to keep going. We've had multiple times where we're like, is this worth it? Because it's so hard. And it's that constant feedback from our community. Keep celebrating martial arts. Keep sharing the gifts, passion, and purpose from all of these incredible individuals. And man, there is no better feeling than when we get that validation from our community that says, you know what, you're doing a good job. Keep doing it. And you know what? It makes us want to keep doing it.
Definitely.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Now, to flip this around, can you give me a funny anecdote of some kind, or a situation that happened to you where you were influenced in a bad way?
Ooh, well, I don't know about funny. But what's really okay, as I say, it's really funny. When I was in high school, I had a lot of bad influences. I really did.
Same here.
Yeah. I looked up to people that I thought were worth idolizing that weren't. And you don't understand without the benefit of a rear view mirror, you idolized them at the state that you were in, where you were at in life. You thought that person is worth idolizing because you saw some attribute that you thought was admirable. So the fact that you can't try and take the same reference point in hindsight and apply it to that point that you were in, which you were idolizing these people, right? So these folks that were a bad influence in hindsight, because you were obviously idolizing them because you thought there was a good reason to idolize them, and they were influential in your life because you thought you were going to get to somewhere that you wanted to go because they had something that you didn't. And it's not until you get there where you're like, whoa, this is a dead end.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a dead end. I was influenced by the wrong people. I was influenced by the wrong sources. I was striving for something that was hollow.
That's really cool. I think one of the biggest molds that people have to break out is being influenced by their peer group or like their social circle. Especially if you're a teenager right now listening to this. Like,
Right.
I never drank. I didn't like alcohol when I was younger. And I was a person that I waited till I was 18 years old to drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was hammered at like 10.
But
Hammered.
every party I went to, every social gathering from 14 to 18 years old, people were like, what's wrong with you? Stop being like, they were up in my face out of sorts because I didn't want to drink.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Sorry.
I didn't think that was something that I wanted to do. And out of peer pressure at 18, I finally was like, forget it. I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to start drinking. And I drank to fit in. So like now I could go to this party and fit in, not be the DD, not be this guy on the side, like not being able to talk to chicks and feel like you're taking advantage of them because they're drunk and you're not. Like that, like all of these things that happen just by being different.
Right.
And you want to fit in. And so many things when you're a teenager, you want to fit in. You want all the people in your life influence you. And it's just the wrong thing to do.
So, but like, how do we, that's what I was trying to get at. Like, how can you can't know that it's wrong. You know, like it's something that we kind of just have to go through.
People are still going through it. I think it comes down to your authentic self.
Staying true to that?
Staying true to that. Like, people can have a negative influence and a positive influence. But if they're influencing you and it's producing negative results and you internally are feeling it, but you're scared to disappoint them because of their influence on you and they're your friends or that's a negative thing. And the people who break out of it just had enough of it. Like, I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to search for a new path. I'm going to search for more friends. But for other people, that group of people, peers, circle or structure, they're so scared of losing it that they're influenced by all of their actions, and they in fact judge their worth or their feelings around what these people think because they're so influential to them.
So I have two quick stories for you.
Cool.
On good influence and bad influence. And just a lesson learned. So when I was in high school, it seems like it always goes back to high school, and some idiot friends were having some kind of a party in a fort that they built in the woods, and they had a case of beer. And I was very against drinking as a 16 or 17-year-old. And so I went to this party and I brought soda for myself. Yeah. Like, I had a jacket with 2 things of Mountain Dew in it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm good. Like, that was it. Like, sugar, I guess, is my drug. Sure, whatever. And in short order, they were all just drunken idiots wandering around in the woods. And I was lucid enough to just be able to go home and drive and not wrap myself around a tree, right?
Yeah.
So there is something to be said for an internal principle to deflect bad influence. Now, the same guy that invited me to that party once told me, hey, you know what's really fun? Driving around in the middle of the night, finding an area where they're building homes and new construction and knocking over porta potties with your car.
Oh.
So one night, I was bored. And do you know what that got me? It got me a car covered in crap. So I look at those two events and I'm like, you know what? There is definitely something to be said for recognizing a bad influence before you do something really stupid. And also holding to your principles, even though there may be peer pressure. I didn't lose the respect of my friends. You know, we were still friends the next morning, even though they gave me some crap about not having a beer, you know, but they were like, fine, you brought soda, whatever. It's, you know, it's fine. Like I got a little bit of flack for it and it was all okay. That nobody would remember. Everybody would remember the fact that my car got covered in crap because I was knocking over porta potties at 1 o'clock in the morning for some stupid reason. So there is something to be said for that little bit of just awareness of what is going to be a good influence on you and you as a person and what is going to be a bad influence and the impact that it has. We get so scared of influence and one way or another, and you really don't need to be.
I also feel like it's part of our human nature. We're tribal, you know, we're afraid of being cast away from the tribe because,
for sure,
you know, it's just part of our genetic survival. We survive as groups. We specialize. Everybody's special, and so part of our livelihood depends on others. And so when we're not accepted, the fear of being cast out. Back in the day, that was a death sentence. If you were, you know what? Hey, screw this guy. You don't fit in. Go away. Well, you're on your own. You're dead. Like, you can't. Like, you survived as a unit. So I feel like that same that survival mode makes us want to fit in, and it makes us susceptible to bad influences. And it's not until we realize the poor results that are produced by emulating these idiots that we don't figure out that it's bad until you've said, wow, this doesn't work. I need to find other influences in my life.
And that's it. You can choose to have good influences or bad influence in your life. There's that famous quote, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And
that's good.
And that is such a true statement. If you hang out with degenerates or like lowlives or the scum of the earth, you yourself are investing your time and energy into that sphere, into that realm. You yourself are that. That's where you're investing your life. But if you invest in being a good family person, invest time with your family and hanging out with your kids or your wife, you are a family person because you are spending time with them. If you spend a lot of time at work, you're that job where you invest your time. And it's not the people who you like the most. You are the total sum of the people you spend the most time with, because that is where you are investing your time, aka your life.
And it's osmosis, man. Have you ever been around we've all had this where, whether it's, you know, people you haven't hung out in a long time or you know, you're in a situation where it's just, it doesn't, like, the you don't, it's like almost caustic, you know, you're like, I don't belong here. Like, it's no longer a point of, and so when do we start to listen to that and actually go out and, to your point of you being the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, who is it that you're spending your time with? And if the people that you're spending time with do not leave you feeling inspired, excited, and uplifted, then they're the wrong people that you're spending time with. Fact. And this is just never become more clear than in the last few years of my life, where time has become so precious. Time has become scarce. And so who I invest my time with I'm conscious of it. I'm conscious of it. Now, I'm not saying, just everybody screw no, it's like, who can you spend time with that amps you up, that switches you on, gets you in the zone, makes you want to strive for more, makes you want to tap into your true potential. Those are the people that is true influence. And how do you know that it's good influence? It's good influence if the results that you're producing are adding to an abundant life. That is good influence.
And if you're to mathematically look at it, in the average person's life, there are around 27,375 days.
23,000.
27,375 days.
Oh, wow.
So your life is finite.
That's not a lot of days.
No. It's crazy when you think of it like that. Like, you only have so many 24 hours of like time frames of living in your life. And it's not a renewable resource.
No kidding.
Every day that passes you by is gone forever. And if you're not inspiring or around influential people, you're wasting those days.
Yeah.
And like, I'm blessed to be hanging out with you, David, and you, Eric. Like, you guys inspire me. You educate me. You do this. And like, Eric, our talks, like, we talk consistently every week, and I always are learning from them every interaction and engagement.
Man, we have this, it's crazy. Like, because it's this resonance. Like, we feed off each other. And that's positive influence.
Yes. And if you're void of that, if you're void of that feeling, from experience, having that is so valuable and important. Somebody that makes you grow, pushes your boundaries, pushes your limits, and causes you to elevate, causes you to reach the next level, pushes you to that element of like, man, like, I don't know if I can handle anymore. I don't know if I could take anymore. It's like, well, I'm doing this. Like, Eric is a prime example. Eric is one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my life, period. And sometimes I'd be like, man, like, dude's putting in work. Like, I got to put in work too. So like, it just elevated my work effort.
Nice.
It elevated my ability to produce more, because if I didn't have that in my life, I wouldn't have seen that more work ethic is possible in a day, that you could produce more hours in a day. And it's just, time is just this beautiful thing. It's so crazy because it's relative too, right?
And it's finite. And that's what I love about this podcast is that we jump on here and we're spending time together, and we leave the situation inspired, educated, new mindset, new thought. Like, it's like all of the benefits. And I'm just so happy that we record these sessions and share it with other people, because like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I've never been on a call or conversation or podcast with you two where I haven't learned something
cool
and come away wanting to do something a little extra.
Nice.
Amazing.
And so this is what I hope for everybody that's listening, is to have that same feeling. Speaking of everybody that's listening, can we come up with some kind of a Budo challenge in regards to influence that somebody can put into practice in their own life right now, this moment, before the podcast is even over? What can somebody do?
I think it would be so cool if we had everyone think, just stop and think about if there's someone in your life that could use a helping hand. If there's someone in your life that's down on their luck, how could you positively influence them to reach for more? How could you positively influence them to want to snap out of whatever spiral that they're stuck in? We underestimate the power that we have as individuals. Something as a simple smile to another stranger has the power to completely change their day.
Yeah, it does.
We truly underestimate the influence, the true influence that we all have inside us. And I really feel like it's an untapped resource. I really feel like a lot of us aren't influencing enough people in a positive way. So the Budo Brothers Challenge is to find someone meaningful in your life that you can positively influence and go carry that out.
Awesome, man. That's really good. This is the kind of stuff that helps the world. You know what I mean? Little random acts of kindness, things like that. Some way to just affect some change in one person that it ends up affecting change in multiple people. So that's awesome stuff.
Beautiful.
Well, any closing thoughts on influence as we wrap up this podcast, gentlemen?
I think just reach out, find us on all of the social media things. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear if we are adding any positive influence into your life in any way. So reach out, and hopefully you guys are having a great day.
Awesome. All right, gentlemen, as always, thank you so much on this excellent podcast, and I will catch you on the next episode.
Sounds great.
All right, perfect.